Have you ever walked into a fast food restaurant thinking you already knew exactly what you were going to order, only to realize that the menu is quietly making decisions for you before you've even reached the counter? That's because fast food isn't just about satisfying hunger anymore. It's about psychology, clever marketing, and meals that look irresistible even when they're secretly some of the worst choices on the menu. But here's the twist: not every fast food meal deserves its bad reputation. Hidden among oversized burgers and sugar-loaded drinks are a few menu items that are actually much smarter choices than most people realize. Today we're counting down 7 fast food meals you should never order and 5 that are surprisingly great. And trust me, the number 1 item has fooled millions into thinking they're making a healthy decision when they're actually doing the opposite. Let's start with a meal that almost nobody gets excited about but probably should. Grilled chicken wraps are often ignored because they don't look nearly as exciting as giant burgers or crispy chicken sandwiches. But that's exactly why they deserve more attention. Unlike sandwiches loaded with fried coatings, heavy sauces, and oversized buns, grilled chicken wraps usually focus on lean protein, fresh vegetables, and a smaller tortilla that naturally keeps portions under control. Protein keeps you full longer, making you less likely to snack later. While some wraps are overloaded with creamy sauces, choosing one with lighter dressing makes it one of the smarter options on the menu. Sometimes the best choice is the one everyone else overlooks. Unfortunately, the next meal proves that appearances can be incredibly misleading. Imagine you've promised yourself to eat healthier, then you spot a crispy chicken salad. It sounds like the obvious choice. After all, it's a salad. But this is a perfect example of the health halo effect. The word salad tricks your brain into assuming the entire meal is healthy, even when it's loaded with fried chicken, shredded cheese, bacon, tortilla strips, and heavy dressing. In some cases, these salads contain more calories and sodium than a cheeseburger. The lettuce isn't the problem, it's everything piled on top of it. If your salad crunch is louder than potato chips, it's probably not helping your diet. That's why looking beyond the name of a menu item matters. Speaking of surprises, here's one that catches almost everyone off guard. The classic hamburger, the simple, single-patty burger, is actually one of the better choices at many fast food restaurants. We're not talking about towering burgers stacked with bacon and extra cheese. A basic hamburger naturally contains fewer calories, less saturated fat, and fewer processed toppings because of its smaller portion size. It satisfies the craving without turning lunch into an eating contest. Researchers have also found that people who order smaller burgers are less likely to add every extra side, making the overall meal much more reasonable. Sometimes simple really does win. But simplicity disappears completely with our next meal because this is where portion control practically goes out the window. Loaded nachos may look like the perfect sharing food, but they almost never stay shared for long. One chip becomes another, then another, until the tray is empty before you even realize how much you've eaten. Unlike burgers, nachos have no natural stopping point. Every bite feels small enough to justify one more handful. That's exactly why they're so dangerous. Fast food restaurants combine crunchy chips, melted cheese, seasoned meat, creamy queso, sour cream, and salty toppings into one highly rewarding meal that keeps your brain reaching for another bite long after you're full. What starts as a snack can quickly become one of the most calorie-dense meals on the menu. Now let's switch to breakfast, where one underrated item deserves far more credit. A simple egg and cheese breakfast sandwich is often a much better choice than oversized biscuits, pancakes drowning in syrup, or sandwiches packed with multiple meats. Eggs provide high-quality protein, and when paired with a simple English muffin instead of a buttery croissant, the meal stays balanced and satisfying. Just skip the extra sausage, bacon, creamy sauces, and hash browns if you want to keep it that way. Sometimes one small decision completely changes the nutritional value of an entire meal, and the next item proves that adding just one more patty is never as harmless as it sounds. Triple cheeseburgers have become something of a fast food trophy. Nobody orders one because they simply need lunch. They order one because it feels like an achievement. 3 beef patties stacked on top of each other, layers of melted cheese stretching with every bite, and a burger so tall you almost have to unhinge your jaw just to take the first bite. It looks impressive, and that's exactly the point. Fast food companies understand that bigger products create bigger excitement, even if they don't create bigger satisfaction. Here's something fascinating about the human brain. The first few bites of almost any favorite food deliver the biggest burst of enjoyment, but after that, each additional bite becomes a little less rewarding. It's called diminishing returns, and it explains why that third beef patty rarely feels 3 times as satisfying as the first one. What it does add is a huge jump in calories, saturated fat, and sodium, all without delivering much extra happiness. Even worse, oversized burgers often convince people that they've already gone all in, so adding large fries and a sugary drink suddenly feels completely justified. One oversized decision leads to another until what started as lunch quietly becomes an entire day's worth of calories. That's why the triple cheeseburger isn't just about what's inside the bun. It's about the chain reaction it creates. And speaking of chain reactions, there's one menu item that sabotages meals without even looking like food. Giant milkshakes are marketed as the perfect sidekick to burgers and fries. But here's the strange part. They don't behave like solid food inside your body. Liquids generally don't make us feel as full as chewing does, which means it's surprisingly easy to drink hundreds of calories before your brain even realizes what happened. Add whipped cream, cookie crumbles, caramel drizzle, chocolate syrup, candy pieces, or cheesecake chunks, and suddenly you're sipping something that contains more sugar than several desserts combined. Yet most people don't replace their meal with a milkshake. They drink it alongside their meal. Imagine eating dinner and then immediately following it with 2 or 3 slices of cake. Most people would hesitate. But pour those same ingredients into a cup with a straw, and somehow it feels completely normal. That's the power of presentation. The body still processes the sugar, the fat, and the calories the same way, even if your brain doesn't register them as a full dessert. It's one of the easiest ways to consume an enormous amount of energy in just a few minutes, and that's why giant milkshakes deserve a permanent spot on the never order list. But now let's talk about a meal that almost never gets the attention it deserves. Bean burritos don't have flashy advertisements. They aren't featured in dramatic slow-motion commercials with cheese stretching across the screen. They don't come stacked 6 inches tall with bacon spilling over the sides. They're simple, affordable, and honestly, a little underrated. Yet nutritionally, they're often one of the strongest options available at many fast food chains. Beans provide a combination that's surprisingly difficult to beat: plant protein and fiber. Protein helps satisfy hunger, while fiber slows digestion, helping you stay full longer instead of searching for another snack an hour later. Together they create a meal that's much more filling than people expect. Of course, there are still things to watch out for. Adding queso, sour cream, extra cheese, or creamy sauces can quickly change the nutritional picture, but keeping the burrito relatively simple allows those natural ingredients to do most of the work. It's proof that you don't always need expensive superfoods to make a smarter choice. Sometimes ordinary ingredients quietly outperform the menu's biggest stars. Unfortunately, our next meal relies on the exact opposite strategy. Double bacon cheeseburger combos aren't sold as just burgers. They're sold as deals. That's an important difference. Restaurants know customers love feeling like they're getting more for their money, so they bundle a large burger, fries, and a soft drink together into one package that looks impossible to resist. Psychologists call this bundling, and it changes the way we think about value. Instead of asking whether we actually want fries or a giant soda, we start asking ourselves whether we're willing to miss out on the better deal. Before long, we've purchased far more food than we originally planned simply because the combo looked like a bargain. The burger itself is already heavy enough, but when you add oversized fries and a sugar-loaded drink, the nutritional numbers climb dramatically. Calories increase. Sodium skyrockets. Added sugar sneaks into the meal through the drink. Yet because everything arrives together on one tray, it somehow feels like a single lunch instead of 3 separate indulgences. That's exactly how the combo wins. It convinces your brain that quantity equals value, even when your body pays the price later. And if you think that's misleading, wait until you hear about the meal that has built an entire reputation around being healthy, despite often delivering something very different. Fish has always enjoyed a healthy reputation. The moment people hear the word fish, they immediately think of lean protein, heart health, and omega-3 fatty acids. That's exactly why fast food fish sandwiches can be so deceptive. On paper, they sound like one of the smartest choices on the menu. In reality, many of them begin with a fillet that's heavily breaded and deep fried before being topped with creamy tartar sauce and tucked inside a refined white bun. Some versions even add cheese, creating a meal that's nutritionally much closer to a fried chicken sandwich than a piece of grilled seafood. The lesson here isn't that fish is unhealthy. It's that preparation matters just as much as the ingredient itself. A healthy food can quickly become something completely different depending on how it's cooked and what gets piled on top of it. That's why it's always worth looking beyond the headline ingredient before assuming you've made the healthier choice. Now, before we reveal the final 2 entries, think about your own go-to fast food order. Chances are you already have a favorite meal that feels impossible to resist. But here's the question: do you actually love it, or have years of advertising simply convinced you that you do? That little thought experiment brings us to one of the biggest surprises on today's list. Kids' meals are usually ignored by adults because, let's be honest, nobody wants to feel like they're ordering from the children's menu. There's a strange sense of pride attached to ordering the biggest sandwich or the largest combo, as if portion size somehow reflects value. But nutritionally, kids' meals often make a lot more sense than their adult counterparts. They offer smaller portions that are much closer to what most people actually need, and depending on the restaurant, they may include lighter sides such as apple slices, yogurt, or milk instead of automatically pairing everything with oversized fries and sugary drinks. Research has consistently shown that portion size has a huge influence on how much we eat. Put more food in front of someone, and most people will naturally eat more, not because they're hungrier but because it's available. That's one reason restaurant portions have grown dramatically over the past few decades, and so have average calorie intakes. Choosing a smaller meal isn't about deprivation. It's about giving your body the chance to recognize fullness before you've eaten far more than you intended. Sometimes the smartest decision isn't changing what you eat at all. It's changing how much of it you eat. And finally, we've reached the number 1 fast food meal you should never order, not because it's always the highest in calories or the fattiest thing on the menu, but because it's probably the most misleading. The so-called healthy smoothie meal has mastered the art of fooling customers. The word smoothie instantly creates images of fresh fruit, fitness, and healthy living. That's exactly what restaurants want you to picture. The reality is often much different. Many fast food smoothies are made with fruit concentrates, sweetened yogurt, sugary juice blends, flavored syrups, frozen dessert bases, and other ingredients that dramatically increase the amount of added sugar in every cup. Yes, there's fruit in many of them, but there's also enough sweetness in some versions to rival multiple soft drinks. Then comes the real trap. Most people don't drink the smoothie by itself. They pair it with a breakfast sandwich, wrap, or another meal because the smoothie feels like the healthy part of the order. Without realizing it, they've created one of the highest sugar combinations available. This is the ultimate example of the health halo effect. The presence of fruit distracts us from everything else hiding inside the cup. Your brain sees vitamins while your body processes what is essentially dessert. That's why this meal deserves the #1 spot. Not because every smoothie is automatically bad, but because it's incredibly easy to underestimate just how much sugar you're actually consuming. And that's a mistake millions of people make every single day. So what should you take away from everything we've covered? Fast food isn't simply divided into foods that are good and foods that are bad. It's divided into meals that honestly represent what they are and meals that rely on clever marketing, oversized portions, and misleading labels to shape your decisions before you've even taken your first bite. Sometimes the obvious indulgence is exactly what it claims to be, and that's fine if you choose it occasionally. But the real danger comes from the meals wearing a disguise, the ones labeled fresh, light, healthy, premium, or value that quietly encourage you to eat more than you planned. The smartest customers don't just order what looks appealing. They stop for a second, look past the pictures, question the marketing, and think about what they're actually getting. The next time you're standing beneath those bright menu boards, you'll know that the healthiest looking meal isn't always the smartest choice, and the simplest item on the menu can sometimes be the real winner. If you enjoyed this video and discovered something you didn't expect, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because every week we uncover the surprising truths hiding behind the foods, products, and everyday habits most people never question. And before you go, tell us in the comments which fast food meal shocked you the most, and whether there's a menu item you think deserves a place on our next countdown. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.